Our first profile looks at John Kalwitz, elected as an alderman 32 years ago. He beat an incumbent and was one of the youngest people ever elected to the Milwaukee Common Council.
Since I was a young man in grade school, I had a lifelong interest in government and public service, and it was nurtured over a period of years through grade school, high school, even the university. I majored in political science at UWM, and I always felt that public service was an arena in which you could make, in fact, a difference with people's lives, that government did, in fact, have a profound influence on what happened, and obviously local government, especially so in terms of the many events that occur and the impact it has on people's lives, all the way from police protection down to the quality of water that you drink. And I have found it most rewarding. I don't regret a moment that I've spent down here.
The native Milwaukeean has been elected to the 2nd Aldermanic District 8 times, 32 years. For 12 of those years, he served as council president. It took 34 ballots before he was selected the first time around. Kalwitz says he's tried as president to concentrate on issues, not personalities, to be a consensus builder, to establish working relationships with the mayor and aldermen. And dealing with issues important to the city and its residents has been rewarding.
So much history unfolded during that period, but I remember a number of issues that we became involved in, and again, collectively as members of the Common Council, starting with the Maricology plant. That was one of the first resource recovery facilities in the United States, and Milwaukee was fortunate enough to be able to get the private sector to put up the capital and to take all the risk. It didn't work out to the extent that some people had hoped. I was disappointed that the federal government, along with others, did not, in fact, invest sufficient monies in terms of the technology to try to make it work. But I still have great pride in that. But there were many other issues, you know, the code of ethics. I was one of the first members of the Common Council to annually release my statement of income. It ultimately resulted in a code of ethics, and it's been amended a number of times, and I've always felt that that should be the standard. Milwaukee has a good, clean system of government, and that's even maintained right now in the year 2000. I was, and I have been, fortunate enough to be in the Milwaukee Common Council during the building of 2 convention centers, both the original center, which was a big box, which has recently been leveled, along with the new Midwest Express Center. And that's really a niche in Milwaukee's armor. I'm very proud of that facility. Phase 2 has been completed. Possibility in the future there might be a Phase 3. I think it's provided a real impetus to Milwaukee's downtown. Additional hotels have come online, even though they are smaller. There's been one major addition to the Milwaukee Hilton. There might be more in the future. There are a number of other big time issues that came forward, and that was downtown development. A lot of development occurred during the 1980s in downtown Milwaukee, including but not limited to the Bradley Center. And of course, the city of Milwaukee did have a small role in that. The fact that the Bradley Center was built in downtown Milwaukee was a big coup for those that wanted to invigorate the downtown. Of course, when we wound through time, for example, just going back into the early 1990s, we were confronted with a water crisis back in 1992, and cryptosporidium, about 100 lives were lost. But I believe the mayor and the council worked well together. We did create a crisis fact-finding committee. We sorted out the reasons why it happened and what we might do in the future to improve the quality of water that we have. That resulted in some major improvements in ozonation system, along with the rebuilding of the filtration beds. I believe that Milwaukee's quality of water is as good as anywhere on the planet. And I think it's something that we might even be able to sell in the future. Milwaukee bottled water. It's as good as Rocky Mountain, or if not better. But we've been involved in other issues recently. Obviously, Miller Park has been certainly an issue which the council and the mayor and the city of Milwaukee played a small role to help make it happen. All these sports amenities, I know people have strong opinions about them, but they do keep a city major league.
Did you ever set out, did you ever think that you would be serving this much time in office?
I never really anticipated that I would serve for like 32 years in the Milwaukee Common Council. In fact, when I first came down here, I didn't even want to become part of the pension system. And I told some of my colleagues that I wasn't going to be around here that long, that I did have other plans. And it was a few years later that some people convinced me that, well, you ought to become at least part of that system. But I had no plans to stay around here for 32 years, no.
Now apparently you do have other plans, since you are or have decided not to run for re-election. What might we see with John Kalwitz in the future?
Well, I'll tell you, it's been a great run for myself. I really feel very privileged to have had the opportunity to serve in public service. I'm very grateful to the constituents who have seen fit to elect me. I'm very grateful to my family for sustaining me, as well as my good friends over a period of time. I've done this on my own volition. I really feel, and I feel deep down, that this is the time to go. That many of my colleagues on the Milwaukee Common Council, that they should have some of the same opportunities that I have had in terms of leadership positions. I plan to continue to work for the foreseeable future. I plan to do some consulting in government as well as the private sector. And I have some commitments that will at least keep me in Milwaukee for 3 years, if not longer. So Milwaukee has a lot to be thankful for. We have people who live in the city that have a very strong work ethic. We have one of the great resources that any city could ever hope to have, namely Lake Michigan, right on our doorstep. We have a strong credit rating. Those certainly are the ingredients that certainly should, in fact, propel Milwaukee into well beyond 2000.
Kalwitz says the city has a number of challenges in its future, among them economic development and jobs, preserving neighborhoods and keeping them safe, and education.
You know, we got involved in that recently, certainly charter schools. While there haven't been a lot of schools, I think education is one of certainly the key issues that Milwaukee has to be concerned with in the future. It has a lot to do with our future. And to be able to offer young people and their parents choices in terms of their education is very important. And the charter schools is certainly one of them. It's so important for the future of this city to maintain a strong school system, especially MPS. We've got to do whatever it takes to make sure that that children in an urban city like Milwaukee receive the same education that you might receive elsewhere, that they do in fact have choices, and those are certainly most important. And of course, I think one of the biggest challenges, aside from those, would be healing the divisions within the city. How do we deal with the diversity that we have? Diversity can, in fact, be a tremendous plus and a strength in terms of the city. But we got to make sure that we're all rowing in the right direction, that we don't become polarized. And many people refer to it as racism, but it's something that we constantly have to deal with. And it's one of the biggest challenges facing urban America.
You've had 30 years to collect stuff. You know, we see it on your walls, memorabilia, a lot of important things over the years. What's going to happen to all these things?
Well, I can tell you right now, I'm taking very little of it home. I told my wife that I would probably, at the most, maybe bring home 3 or 4 boxes. 3 or 4 boxes of some mementos and some records. I do have a lot of plaques. I have a lot of pictures, but some of that will remain here, and I'll take very little with me.
It's been a good 32 years then.
It's been a good 32 years. Enjoyed every moment of it.
At the completion of the current term, Alderman Kalwitz will be tied for the second longest tenure in Milwaukee Common Council history. The record holder, Cornelius Corcoran, an alderman for 44 years, from 1892 to 1936. Like Alderman Kalwitz, Alderman Wayne Frank has had a long tenure on the Common Council, 27 years at the end of the current term. He'll be moving from the political stage to one in the theater.
I think from 1960 on, when John Kennedy was elected, there was a wave of enthusiasm around the country for politics, and government was considered an honorable profession, and the whole idea of the Peace Corps and getting involved was influential on young men and women like myself at the time, and I thought that getting into politics at some point would be something I wanted to do.
So Frank ran and was elected to the 8th Aldermanic District in 1973. He's been re-elected 6 times. The lifelong Milwaukee resident was a Peace Corps volunteer in Africa in the 1960s, working in a school construction program. He also served as an advisor for the State Department in Vietnam.
The interest in government is that you're helping people. And you're also helping people in terms of the machinery of government, making it work for you. You know, is this the best way to plow snow? Is this the best way to clean the streets? Is this the best way to set up traffic patterns? Is this the best way for the long term for our housing stock? So the decisions you're making on a day-to-day basis, as well as the major policy decisions, all affect people. Second, you have your constituent responsibilities, which are the individual calls that come in, or people that you meet on the street corners that say that something wasn't taken care of and they want that service to be either improved or they were skipped over, whether it be garbage collection or a cat up a tree or whatever. You have that dual kind of thing as a city alderman. It's probably the last, somebody described it as maybe the last generalist job in the United States.
Alderman Frank says a job when he was 21 and in college was among the best experiences he's had for being an alderman, tending bar.
My uncle had a tavern, and you are expected to listen. And I've said to people, I think the best training ground for somebody going into local public office are 2 things. One, I think you should become a CPA and know the bottom line and what all those figures mean, and study accounting so that those budgets don't become just a myriad of mishmash and things you don't understand. And second, be a bartender or a cab driver and deal with people in which you're expected to listen. And I think those 2 occupations or training are wonderful for somebody who wants to go into public office.
Frank says you also have to trust the instincts of the people.
Basically, I believe people are legitimately good-hearted and will say, I'll give up an extra $1 on my property tax, or I'll give up some time, or I'll do these other things if you can assure me this is going to be for the long-term betterment of my neighborhood or the city or the country. People are willing to do that inside rock bottom, in my opinion. And I've never been afraid to state honestly to them how I felt about something and ask them to join me in that effort, because it's good for all of us. You know, we want to make this a better place to live all the time. That's part of our goal.
In leaving office, are there any disappointments, things you wish you had been able to accomplish?
No, I don't. Like Satchel Paige says, I never look behind me. I don't look backwards. And Satchel Paige says there might be somebody catching up to you. I don't look at it that way and spend time musing about the past. There are disappointments, of course. There are votes that I've taken, and there are some decisions that I made were wrong as I look back on them. You know, But at the time, I made my decisions and some of those votes based on what I thought was right at the time. And you can't beat yourself forever about something like that. And tomorrow, to me, Tom, tomorrow is more exciting than yesterday.
Some of Frank's tomorrows will be found on a theater marquee. A playwright, he's had several works produced by professional theater companies in Milwaukee.
I've been fortunate to discover later on in life a talent that God has given me. I don't take credit for it. It's just a talent that I have to write for the theater. And I enjoy it so much. And it is such a high to have your words come alive with people, with professional actors, and see that on stage, and also have a chance to touch people. And that kind of experience, along with the creative experience, which is almost undescribable in terms of what it means to sit down before a blank paper and create things, and how much excitement that is for me. All of those have led me to say, I don't want to wait till I'm 65 or 67 and then try to do this full time. I think there's a whole new career out there. I think there's a whole new adventure out there in the theater. And so I'll make a little less money if I had stuck around in terms of pension and retirement. And I don't care. I think I want to explore this while I'm young enough to give it as much energy as I humanly can, while my health is relatively good, and while there's a chance yet to travel a little bit and see some more of the world, and take the opportunity to push this, push this talent, not for New York or Chicago or Los Angeles, but for Milwaukee. I'm a Milwaukee person. I'm going to stay here, and let them come to see us.
As chair of the Milwaukee Arts Board, Frank also worked to showcase the talents of other artists.
I think that the city has become aware, and there's a consciousness out there about making art in the public place part of our whole mystique of construction and architecture. Maybe it's not mystique, but just bringing the idea of public art out in the open is gaining all over the country and is gaining in Milwaukee. The other thing that I've done that I think is exciting is to start the International Arts Festival. Concentrate on one ethnic theme, which we do, and this year it was Jewish culture and contribution, the year before that Irish, the year before that German-Austrian, and 2001 is Italian.
Alderman Frank says Milwaukee should be proud of the quality of its workforce. He says one of the major challenges facing the city is its housing stock.
As time continues, particularly in the 8th District and in parts of what I would call the middle-class areas of the city, our housing stock is aging and is going to age even further. Now, what are we going to do to keep that housing stock, and what are we going to do to either reinvent it in those areas, I think is the big challenge, because what I call the middle-class areas of the city are really the heart and soul of the city in terms of which way it's going to turn. Is it going to get worse, or is it going to get better? And I think that time is an enemy here if we don't do anything, but it also is an opportunity. Time can be an opportunity because it gives us an advantage of saying, let's do something. Will I go back to it? I don't think so. I'd like to be distant from it. I'd like to keep in contact with people as friends, and again, listen before talking, but not participate so much. I'm going to try that for a year or two, and if there's something where I can make a contribution on a board or a commission or something, the mayor has asked me to consider being involved with the International Arts Festival, and I may do that, I don't know. But I don't want to make a fool of myself. And there are other things out there that, as I mentioned, in writing and theater, that have an appeal and a whole new world to me that I think will be just as exciting as the world I'm leaving.
Unlike Alderman Kalwitz and Frank, Alderman Dan Schramm is retiring after only 2 terms on the council, 8 years. Alderman Schramm's election in 1992 followed a more than 26-year career in public service as a police officer.
There were some people out in my district who tried to encourage me to run in 1988, and Obviously, I couldn't do that because of my police career and being a long ways away from retirement, that it wasn't feasible at the time. So we just kind of dismissed it. Well, then in 1991, those same people said, "Hey, gee, you know, we need some good people downtown. Would you consider it now?"
He considered it and was elected to the 5th Aldermanic District in 1992, running on a platform of better representation, taxes, and crime.
And I thought my expertise with my career, having 26, almost 27 years in law enforcement, could help to get the point across that this is how I think it should be done, and this is where we should be putting people in, and not usurping the chief's power, mind you, but getting more people on board, etc. And the last thing was, is I was kind of the watchdog on money. I'm a tight guy to begin with, and I thought I could do the job to hold the line on taxes. And to be honest with you, that's what's happened. Since '92 to date, I think we've held the line, yet we've done a lot of good things with the tax dollars that came in. Plus, crime has gone down. Now, there's a whole gamut of reasons that happened, but I like to think that, that city officials have a hand in that as well, and I think we do.
Schramm says it's ironic that those priorities probably haven't changed all that much.
I think the person that comes into to this seat has got to back up and take a look and say, where are we monetarily? Where are we tax-wise? What can be done to make it better by maybe keeping more money in the pockets of our taxpayers? So that's got to be done, I think, working not only within the city budget, but also encouraging our state people to do the same. Crime-wise, I said this a couple of years ago at a meeting that Chief Jones sponsored. In fact, the question was, what do you think would happen in the city of Milwaukee if we attacked drugs and gangs? I still believe that those are two areas that go hand in hand, and if we would concentrate on those areas, and I'm not knocking the chief's policy on the other things that he's doing, but I think we've got to say, this is where we have to go. Most of the homicides in this city are gang-related, drug-related.
As a representative of an outlying district, Schramm hopes his successor and the city will continue to include all neighborhoods in plans for the future.
You can't just consistently say downtown, 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 because when you do that and you forget the perimeter, now you got a problem. And all of a sudden, where it started out as a small problem becomes a cancer. And it's a small problem now, so I've been trying to encourage them. And if you've noticed, what's really interesting is look at the terminology that is being used, neighborhood services, okay? So I think that's being realized that, and I'm not saying me, there's others that I think feel the same way, but we got to take care of the neighborhoods so that we don't have a cancer that keeps getting bigger and bigger. So that's, I think, got to be a priority for the new alderman that comes in.
As a police officer before coming to City Hall, Schramm heard himself called names other than captain.
There was a term that they used to call law enforcement officers back in the 60s. And my feeling was that if you can't beat them, join them. So I started collecting a couple of these, and it kind of caught on. And eventually, people started bringing me these things. So you can see there's right here, I'm going to just guess there might be 75, 100 of them. I've got more of them at home. I don't have any room for them here. And it was just kind of a fun thing to do. And so, like I said, pigs are beautiful. I think maybe that's the term that I should use.
What is it like just to have all this stuff around?
Think of it as your house. You know, an alderman, I think, that does the job like he should will be spending a lot of time down here. So having said that, it's like being at home. When you're at home, you surround yourself with things that make you comfortable, and that's really what this is all about. It brings back memories, and it's the conversation pieces, and that's really what you have them here for.
What's in the future for Alderman Schramm? A move south, opening an antique shop.
Once you do this, it's in your blood, and it really never goes away. Would I ever run for another office? Probably not. But would I certainly like to be somewhat involved on the outskirts in the area that I choose to live in? Because that's one of our plans is to move to South Carolina with my grandkids. I don't have any up here, and I see them once a year, so that's our plan. So I'll be moving to a new area, so I'll be real interested to see how they operate, and certainly plan on maybe voicing my opinion whether it be zoning, et cetera, because where I'm moving, there's not a lot of zoning laws, okay? And in order to preserve and protect maybe the property that I intend on buying, that I would maybe like to see some changes. So I'll be doing some of that stuff, but to do this on a full-time basis, I don't think so.
Alderman Schramm, like the other two aldermen, says he is impressed with the quality of the City of Milwaukee workforce, and he won't hesitate to brag about the city to his new neighbors.
I'm talking all the way from the people that are out there plowing the streets, to the clerical staff, to the bureaucrats across the street. A lot of sharp people, and a lot of people that want to do good for the city. And what would I tell people in South Carolina as to what I see in the city of Milwaukee? I would tell them, if you want big city life and yet move to an area where you can feel a lot safer than Chicago, New York, or all of those, this is the place to come. There's a lot of stuff happening here that's good stuff, and it's going to continue. So I would have nothing but praise for this community.